All right, yeah, hey, we'll start with a little background there. Okay. Hey, well, here, good to have you with us. Technical difficulties as usual. Good grief, man. How you guys doing tonight? TGI Sports Talk, one-on-one with Keith Engle tonight. Tonight's interview is with Matt Robinson, former Georgia Bulldog quarterback, played with the Jets in the NFL, played with the Broncos and the Bills, and we'll talk to him about his college career, his early life college career, influences, all the normal stuff, and what else is going on in his life today since the NFL, and we'll see how that goes. And listen, Kermit Washington, the interview I did last week with Kermit will air tonight live. This interview with Matt will be next Thursday at 6:00, or I'm telling you when it'll be. You'll be seeing this next Thursday at 6:00. How about that? You're going to see Kermit Washington tonight. I'm so used to being live. That's what I get thrown off anyway. Listen, my guest tonight, as I said, Matt Robinson, drafted by the Jets out of Georgia in, I want to say 1977. Had his moments, had a really good college career. And we want to talk to Matt about all of that. And I'm going to bring in my guest, Matt Robinson, tonight, right now. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Keith. I got to tell you right away, it's probably good sometimes we're not live.
Oh, I know. I used to do these interviews. I used to do them all live, and there was problematic sometimes because there'd be problems. It's funny. I do all my other shows live except this interview show, and I'm talking to people like they're actually watching me right now, which is fine.
That's good.
Listen, I went to Perth Central High School and graduated with 51 people, and I'm happy when I can just get through the day. So.
I know the feeling these days.
Well, Matt, I'm really happy to have you on tonight, and I'm not a Jet fan, but I certainly watched the Jets a lot because I'm here in upstate New York. So when I was a kid, I had no choice but to watch the Jets. And 1977, I was 17 years old. We got a lot of Jet games, and I remember you there. So I want to chat with you a little bit. Obviously, you were from Georgia originally.
Actually, no, Keith, I was born in Michigan, lived there for about 11 years, moved to a little town outside Atlanta called Sandy Springs, which is now a big town.
Yeah.
And I went to high school there, college down the street of Georgia. I lived in the Atlanta area for 18 years. And then from there, I moved down to Sarasota during my 79, after the 79 year with the Jets off season. My parents were down there. So I went down there and I became a little bit of a rancher, had a little ranch down there with some Appaloosas and some Charolais cows, certainly a gentleman rancher. And, so anyway, and then in 1984, I came up to Jacksonville to play for the Jacksonville Bulls.
Oh, in the USFL.
Yes.
Cool. So, as you're growing up, and during your high school years, I mean, what was your upbringing like? Tell us a little bit about your growing up in Georgia and in your formative years.
Well, wonderful parents, mom and dad, best friends, two older brothers, a younger brother that passed early in our lives. The older brothers, yeah, thank you. The older brothers were a year and a half apart, so we're all very close, all into sports. Mom and dad, just great people, great family life, very supportive, but not overbearing, not helicopters by any stretch. They were the true definition of parents who acted as parents and then became my friends later in life, which is what I've done with my daughter. She's now 27. I raised her pretty much on my own. And I was a dad and she didn't like it. And now she's my best friend in the world. So,
yeah,
I was very lucky. I had a great upbringing and played all sports in high school. It was, if you didn't have a glove or a mitt or a mask on or a helmet or something, you felt odd.
What were there other sports that you excelled at and you potentially could have gone further with besides football?
I actually was a better baseball player than a football player. I played shortstop and I had a number of different workouts. And when I went to Georgia, I had about 28 college scholarships, and Georgia and Tennessee offered me dual baseball and football. But I will tell you this, and I understand it completely nowadays, that, Vince Dooley, God rest his soul, when it came time after my freshman year, back then freshmen couldn't play varsity football, so you had a freshman team.
Right.
After that, I was ready to go to spring baseball, and coaches came to me and said, "Ooh, boy, you go play spring baseball. You may never play football here again." Took an 18-year-old kid and kind of put the pressure on. So I succumbed at age 18, never played another inning of baseball, which is doggone it moment, so to speak. But I ended up going into that spring. I thought I'd gain some leverage. I went into that spring as the number 6 quarterback on the depth chart. And by the third game of the next year, my sophomore year, I was the starter and kept the job. So, it all worked out okay.
Were you approached or drafted at all by any Major League Baseball organizations before that?
George Zaraw. I had a lot of action with the Cincinnati Cincinnati Reds. And George Zaraw was the scout there at the time, and I did a number of workouts with them, and he said, Matt, we are going to draft you. And as it turned out, I didn't get drafted. I think they knew I was going to do the football thing. It was pretty obvious I was going that direction, and I don't know if they wanted to waste a choice. And then actually after the draft, they came to me to sign me as a free agent. And I just said I wanted to go to college. And I thought at that time I was going to be able to do both. So I had the best of both worlds at that point.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever have any regrets that you didn't go the other way?
It's something like, I don't grind over it. Didn't lose any sleep over it because the football thing was very good to me. But, at the same time, you go, what if? And I really love baseball. I didn't like getting hit in the back of the head, blindsided, and I didn't like football practice and all, but I loved baseball, every aspect of it. I loved practice. I used to catch practices, and I'm not a catcher. I just loved everything about the game.
Let me ask you something. Since we're talking about baseball, we'll take a little turn here, which happens during my interviews. Sometimes we have a little stream of consciousness moments. Talking about baseball. So I'm a big baseball fan, always was. That was my sport growing up. I played into, some semi-pro into my 30s until, the real world kind of caught up with you. But it's hard sometimes to watch the game today. What are your thoughts about the game today? Just as a side note of the other stuff we're talking about here with your career, what do you think about baseball today?
Great question. And it's funny. I watch football and baseball, I think, different than other people. Number one, I watch football from a completely different set of eyes than most people do. I'm more about the check off, the cutoff block, the little things that make the game that make the difference when you're watching film, whether you win or lose a game over time, over the course of quarters. Baseball, I like watching it because having played it for so many years and studied it, I like watching it because I know between every pitch there's 4 or 5 different games going on. Yeah. And so I look at those games. I look at how the first baseman, handles that guy on first base. I look at the shortstop and the second baseman, how they handle the guy on second base, how the pitcher pitches, when does he step off the rubber, how's the shift. I'm not so big on restriction or restricting the shifts these days. I mean,
me either.
If I got 9 guys on the field, I can put them wherever I damn well please. And now you're going to dictate to me that I can't put one on the other side of second base? I don't agree with any of that. Well, I do think rules and regs, people have gotten too involved in making rules in all of our games.
Excellent point. That's kind of where I was getting here. I mean, some of the rules that speeding up the game, there's, not to go too far into this, but there's rules in the books to speed up the game. Just enforce the rules that are already there. And as far as the shift goes that you mentioned, how about we just teach guys to play the game the way we're supposed to? And that's kind of hit where the ball where people aren't.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea. And if everybody shifts to the right and I'm a lefty and I can punch one down the third baseline, that's my job.
Right.
You shifted wrong. I outsmarted you. I beat you on that particular play.
Great.
And, I just don't think, and plus too, the pitching strategies now where your guy has to pitch to 3 batters or whatever they're talking about. And I'm like, you know what? Why even have strategy? Why even have a manager?
How about the fact you can only throw over to first base twice?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a base stealer in your day, but wouldn't you love to be able to get a guy to throw over twice? You got a pretty good advantage after that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me of the 78 season when they changed the 2 rules, the 5-yard chuck rule when I was in New York.
Yeah.
And then the lineman could hold inside the frame to enhance the passing game. I get it. I get offense turns everybody on. Yeah. But, at the same time, don't destroy the game. I mean, and now I'm on this tangent here, or this role. When you look at replay, how in the hell can I be at home in my living room and look at a camera and see that it was a bad call, but yet they keep the call the same?
Yeah.
What's the use in having replay, even if 1 out of 10 times they don't read the film correctly?
It is.
I've never liked replay because it takes the human factor out of the game, and that's what makes sports great, the human factor. And that includes referees and umpires.
I feel like we might have had different mothers at the same time or something. Grown up next to each other in a hospital. I feel the same
you know,
way.
I agree with the safety part in football, the things they're doing to keep it safe, because I'll never forget. I think Pat Ryan, he was 11 years into his career. He and I played quarterback in New York together. I was already retired. He was in Philly. Pat and I were on the phone, and I go, Pat, what's it like? He goes, Matt, it's so darn dangerous out there now. He goes, it's scary. He goes, and that was just a matter of a 4 or 5 year time from when I retired to while Pat was still playing, where all of a sudden everything changed dramatically. And he said it's very dangerous. And, I look at a Darryl Stingley event and understand why you can't make yourself a spear, why you got to stay away from the neck ahead. I get all that, but call it the same for everybody. Don't call it different for Tom Brady because he's Tom Brady, when you know exactly what play I'm talking about.
Let me move this hat over here.
Hey, I'm a Tom Brady fan. Don't get me wrong. I love the Patriots, and I love Tom Brady. What he's accomplished is beyond it. But having played the position is beyond anything anybody could really understand, truly, what he's accomplished.
Great.
But, he needs to play by the rules as well.
Who are your, speaking of quarterbacks, I mean, who are your influences? Who did you root for as a kid, quarterback wise? Who you were a fan of as you were growing up in the position?
Couple good stories. Needless to say, I wore white shoes in number 12 my senior year in high school. What does that do?
There you go.
I tell you, one of my greatest inspirations was Bart Starr. It just so happened, a guy back in the old days in Green Bay, the players used to go to camp and they would live with people. Live with people year after year during the camp, 2.5 months, and then they get their home where they live. So it wasn't dorm rooms like it is today. And so Bart Starr used to live with a friend named Roger Thompson. Roger Thompson ended up moving down to Atlanta and coaching baseball with my father, with us, against us. So I got to know Roger very well. So therefore, I got to know through him Bart Starr, which at age 12, 13, 14 is, oh my goodness. So he became a hero of mine right away. And of course, I knew who he was before that.
Right.
So he was a huge influence. One of the funny parts of that story is Bart is now years later. He's the head coach in Green Bay. I'm in Buffalo. We're playing Green Bay up at Lambeau in a preseason game. So I'm walking onto the field. And there's Bart in the middle of the field with his back to me. And it's almost like he knew I was coming. I got about 5 yards from him. He kind of turned his head, didn't even turn around, look at me. I walked in front of him, shook his hand, and he looked at me and went, "Who'd have thunk it?" And I thought, what a great line. He remembered me from being a kid. And the fact that we were standing on the same football field together was kind of cool. Cool.
I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, the 12 in white shoes you're referring to has got to be Joe Willie. So, an Alabama boy, you end up at Georgia.
Yeah.
And what other schools recruited you besides the Bulldogs?
Well, I wanted to go to Michigan State so bad I could taste it, having been from Michigan.
Really?
And so I got offers from Notre Dame, Ohio State, all the SEC schools, Arizona State. Arizona State also talked to me about baseball. Probably about 25, I guess I got.
Yeah.
And the Georgia-Tennessee thing made sense. And actually, I committed to Tennessee to play originally. But then I never heard back from the scout. And it became signing day, and I never heard from them. And this was Wayne. What was Wayne's last name? But anyway, he's now passed. But I never heard back from Tennessee, so Georgia was my next guess. And so I committed to Georgia. And next thing you know, Bill Battle called me on the phone and goes, "Matt, what's going on? You committed to us." And I went, "Bill, I haven't heard a thing from you guys in a month. It's signing day, or the signing day afternoon."
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he wasn't too happy with his scout. Let's put it that way. But I'm a man of faith, so I believe what happened was supposed to happen.
Gotcha. So it's interesting. Some of the schools you mentioned, you probably could have gone and quarterback position would have been emphasized a little bit more if you're going out west to the Pac-12, let's say.
Yeah.
The SEC, unlike today, where everybody's throwing the football all around the field, including the SEC. You went to Georgia where, it was kind of ground and pound mostly, playing for Vince Dooley, who I think is one of the most underrated head coaches in college history. I think he's a great coach, and people have kind of forgotten him. He did pass away this past year, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, not too long ago. And Keith, he's still, up until the day he passed, he and Barbara Dooley were both still great friends of mine.
Yeah.
Vince and I didn't get along too well when I was there. I was a little bit of a wild child. and
Yeah.
he had every right, but he still played me, bless his heart. But he and I stayed friends. That 4-year class we had was considered one of the wildest classes to ever go through Georgia, and Dooley was the first one to admit it. But he was a guy that I looked at like my father. When I was young at college, age 18 through 21, 22, he was stern. But I realized how smart he was the older I got and why he did what he did. And I really admired the man, right? Still do to this day. I think you're right. He is heavily, very underrated. But again, Vince, going back to the throwing game and the quarterbacks, Vince's opinion was when you throw the ball, 2 out of 3 things that happen are going to be bad: incomplete, intercepted. There's only one good thing that can happen from it. And so that was his thought. But I got lucky in that we went from 3 yards in a cloud of dust under Frank Inman to Bill Pace, who came as the OC my sophomore year out of Vandy. And the Veer offense was a whole different animal than the Power I. And we got a chance to throw the ball quite a bit.
Yeah, and that certainly helps your career. Now, some good Georgia teams. In your first year, you were only 500. You had to get to a bowl game, I believe. Tangerine Bowl, maybe when you were
Tangerine Bowl.
But the next 2 years, 9-3, 10-2, you get to the Cotton Bowl, you get to the Sugar Bowl, which SEC champion went to at that time. What were those experiences like? Tell us a little bit. And again, you say you're a wild child, so. What was it like being on the campus of Georgia? You said Vince Dooley was now he was an influence on your life. At the time, you were fighting it. Who else influenced you? And when did you think, I got a chance to go to the NFL?
Let's go back to being on the Georgia campus. And we're going to talk about the bowl games here in a minute, because the biggest mistake Vince Dooley made was taking us to these cities a week early. If you know what I mean.
Yes, I gotcha.
But influence-wise, of course, Vince was a big influence. Pat Hodson was a receiver coach there, and of course, Irk Russell. To watch Irk, even though he was a defensive coordinator, to watch Irk from afar and see how he treated people and how he treated all of us was a true inspiration. And that's something that affected me immediately. He really showed me the difference between a coach that cares and is truly interested in you excelling versus a coach that is all he's interested in is the logo, the team, and his job. So Irk was a real influence. Pat Hodson was another great influence. Bill Pace, rest his soul, another great influence. So I had some really, really, Mike Cavan, another one who played quarterback at Georgia before me. Mike was a great influence. He was he was our running back coach at the time. So we had some really strong guys on that coaching staff that it was kind of cool, Keith, because they weren't so removed from the game themselves that they didn't understand why we were acting like a bunch of knuckleheads.
While we're on that topic of the coaches, but I get it. That's funny. We all know why we acted that way when we get older.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about coaches, though, and you just mentioned not, caring about the kids and not just wearing the logo and caring about whatever the school,
keeping their job, the money, the prestige. Do you feel like are there coaches today? We'll use Georgia for an example. And there's been a few things that have gone on there now. Obviously, back-to-back championships. Kirby Smart, by everything I can see, is a good person and a good coach. I'm not holding him responsible in any way for what's going on there. But do you think the coaches in general care as much about the kids today, or is it more the logo and the prestige that we just talked about? Keith, when we go that direction, I think we're talking more about, a people thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't care whether you're talking, I'm a general manager and an owner of a statewide home care company in Florida, do millions of dollars a year of business. And, of all the interviews we do and all the people we hire and all the people we're involved with, there's going to be a measure of crazy people in there. I hate to put it. There are a measure of people that I look at it this way. I remember we used to go to camp, April mini camp after the draft, and everybody run around in shorts and T-shirts and helmets, and everybody scared you. Everybody looked great. And the saying became, everybody looks good in their underwear. It's when you put on the uniform and have to really play is when you find out. When we hire these people and put them in the field and ask them to really produce and do a job, that's when you truly find out about them. So I think a lot of these coaches are it really is the human factor. They see an opportunity, they take advantage, they get more worried about themselves, and they end up shooting themselves in the foot. So I think very quickly these days, these guys rise to the top, and I don't mean like cream, I mean they're exposed a lot quicker than they used to be.
Right.
And I think part of that too, Keith, is kids are smarter. Kids are smarter these days. They're not going to put up with that kind of abuse and verbal abuse or being ignored or not being coached or being put aside for no reason because you like that guy better, but I'm a better player. I mean, I just don't think that stuff flies anymore as for a longer period of time as it used to.
What do you think?
Harder to be a phony these days.
Agreed. I mean, what are your thoughts about it? I mean, what if given your relationship with Vince Dooley, and you understood later on, but at the time it might have been a little contentious. With the rules that they have today with the transfer portal, where everybody's a free agent, but basically every year, coaches obviously contracts don't mean anything. Players or commitments don't mean anything. You got the NIL money. I mean, do you think that do you wish you'd grown up 50 years later, or do you think you were happy then?
Well, I wish I had grown up later for more than just that reason.
Yeah.
Well, when I was at Georgia, Dooley was head of the ethics committee for the NCAA, so therefore we were held to a different standard, and I understand that.
Yeah.
I used to answer the second part, I used to call my mother on my birthday every year after I'd retire from football, and I'd yell at her. My mom was my best friend. I'd yell at her for having me too early. I said, do you realize if I'd have had my football career 15 years later, I'd be a multimillionaire right now, and I would blah, 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 and we'd laugh about it. But it's amazing how all of a sudden in the late 80s, mainly early 90s, everything just flipped. Everything just flipped from an NFL standpoint, dollars and cents wise.
Yeah.
What I have wanted to grow up right now, probably not. I think I was pretty darn happy and pretty fortunate to be where I was at the time I was there. I think the kids have so much more to deal. I got a 27-year-old. They have so much more to deal with these days.
They don't get to be kids, do they? That's my opinion. Kids don't get to be kids long enough, especially athletes. When 17 years old, they're throwing NIL money at them to come to school. I mean, that's a lot.
God, Keith, I could go 10 different ways on that. Number one, how do you pay a kid going into the University of Miami, guarantee him $1.2 million a year, and he's never put the college jockstrap on? How does that fare in the locker room when you got a junior, senior guy's been working his tail off, and now you got a kid getting paid $1 million, and I'm going to listen to him? No, I mean, I don't agree with any of that. I firmly believed all along the way that if you start transferring money at the college level, you have opened a can of worms that you're never going to be able to close. And I think money's flowing under the table now more than it ever has. And now, you've got everybody finding the loophole. Where was it? University of Texas, every signee gets a $50,000 bonus. I mean, come on. That wasn't the intent of NIL.
Yeah. When it started, I did a couple of vlogs on it saying the same kind of thing. You've opened Pandora's box. The schools aren't going to be involved. And if you don't think the schools are going to get involved, you're wrong. And they're heavily involved now. And nobody's policing it.
No. Well, we already know there was a subculture there anyway of guys getting money and cars under the table. Every college in the country doing it in their own way, at their own level, their own fashion. Now you open this door. Oh, my goodness. I just think, 5 years from now, we're going to look back and go, oh, we were right. I hate to say it. I
think you're right. I think, again, obviously the landscape is different. Let's go back 50 years where it was simpler. Tell us about some of those bowl games experiences that you had.
Okay, so we go to Orlando for the Tangerine Bowl in front of all 38,000 of them at the time. We got beat by Miami of Ohio. I don't remember being in the room, to be honest with you. It was an absolute fun free-for-all. And I'm not proud to say this, but I always told myself, I'm 67 now. When I turned 60 years old, I felt like it was time that all the things that I've been hiding, I could now talk about and not worry about it and be proud of. So the next year, we went to the Cotton Bowl. Of course, that was fantastic. We played a pretty decent game. Arkansas was a good football team, and that's the famous shoestring play that everybody knows about that Ray pulled off. But
right,
we were kind of calm there. And then senior year in New Orleans, I mean, come on, imagine, 21 years old, you're in New Orleans for a week. Yes. Why would you expose me to that for a week?
Did they? I mean, besides meal money, did they give you like bail money for?
Yeah, that's a great question. But that was back in the day when you got your $20 a month stipend for laundry, and that's all you got. So, and you couldn't sell your tickets for any more than face value. And of course, and that's back when I was having this conversation the other day when I was a 77, a rookie in New York. All the players got Super Bowl tickets. I got 2. Guess what the face value was?
What, 77? I'm going to say $50.
$60.
That was close.
You darn close. Yeah, that was a good guy. Yeah, good $60. So
that's very interesting.
But anyway, and the Pittsburgh game, just as an example, we went all week long, and that was a national championship game for us.
Yeah.
We were number 4. We beat Pitt, and we're the champs, and we ended up number 10 that year. But going into the game, we knew that Pitt could run from sideline to sideline as good as anybody, so we were going to punch it down their throats. Well, for some reason, we ran from sideline to sideline. We walked right into their trap and never really got out of it. Now, we were 13-6 with them at the half, and I think Tony had 37 yards. Well, as you know, he broke a Sugar Bowl rushing record with 206 or 7 yards, and Matt Cavanaugh blew us away in the second half. So the combination of those two, we had no chance.
That was a good football team Johnny Majors had there for a couple of years.
Yeah, that was a good football team.
And then Jackie Sherrill came in after, obviously, and kept it for a while. So again, I think one of the questions I kind of thrown in there too is, at what point, and maybe, you're a confident kid from the sounds of it. Did you think from the beginning you were going to be playing in the NFL, or did it strike you that, hey, I got a chance for this?
Confident kid. That's an interesting comment in that I just love doing it. All of them. I used to go from baseball practice to high jump during track meets. I just love being a part of all of it. So if it was a sport, I was going to do it. I never worked during the summer. Oh, I did one summer, but I always played baseball. Played American Legion when I was out of high school. I absolutely love sports in general. So I just did it. I never aspired to be anything. I just love playing. And then all of a sudden, people are going, hey, so-and-so from Georgia wants to talk to you or wants to meet. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness. And quite frankly, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't take a bunch of trips to, even though I got scholarship offers and stuff, I got offered to go out to places, but I didn't take a whole lot of trips. And so it wasn't something that when you see on TV today, the kid, pictures of the golfers, Jordan Spieth at age 4, hitting golf balls. I'm going to play in the Masters. That wasn't me. That wasn't me at all. I just love playing games.
That was me, but I never did any things I said I was going to do when I was a kid.
That's good.
So anyway, we get this the 77 draft, and you are drafted by the Jets. Not terribly high, but you get drafted in the NFL, which, by the way, is a pretty good honor in itself.
Yeah.
And you get to a team. You just miss your idol, I think, by a year, if I'm not mistaken, right, Joe?
77 was his last year in LA.
Yeah, and you get to go there to kind of, I don't know if you were actually competing. You can tell us about that with his replacement, Richard Todd, who I'm sure you had run across in the SEC when he played for Alabama.
Well, let me stop you there and say this. It's interesting because different back then. I never played in Tennessee or against Tennessee. I never played in Baton Rouge or against LSU.
Really?
Yeah. So even though there was no East and West, I didn't play Tennessee. I played Alabama once my senior year. We beat them 21-0. And Richard was already gone.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was a little different back then. So, we played the Mississippi States, Ole Miss, Florida, Carolina, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, I think at that time, or I don't even know if they were in it at that time, but we never played LSU, never played Tennessee.
I think South Carolina was in the ACC then, if I'm not mistaken.
They were, yeah, back then, yeah.
Yeah. So how'd you get along with Richard Todd? We'll start there. Again, you may not have played against him, but he's an Alabama grad. You're a Georgia grad. Not a lot of love lost there a lot of times. So
Richard and I hit it off right away. I mean, when I got there, Marty Domrez was there. Steve Joachim had been there for 3 years prior out of Temple. And actually, yeah, Marty was brought in. So they ended up keeping me, Richard, Marty, and me. And Marty was the veteran, to kind of be the in-between guy. Hopefully I get to a point in a year or two or 3 years. And then, of course, Richard was handed the job as the number 1 draft choice. So the rookie year, Richard, I mean, we're getting along great. We're all working together, and Richard, I think, got hurt. Marty didn't play very well, so I ended up starting 4 games my rookie year. Did okay. Richard was very supportive. Next year, Marty's gone. Richard and I are 1-2. Great relationship. He gets hurt. I play 12 games. Pretty good stretch. Wesley makes All Pro. We lead a lot of. We led the league that year in yards per completion. And then at the end of the year, Richard came back, and that's when he had his kind of stumblings with the fan base and all that.
Yeah.
Last 4 weeks of the season. Of course, Richard and I are still fine. That's that. He and I are he and I, and the team is the team. And then third year, I won the job. I get named the starting quarterback after the Giants game. And great, one of the unbelievable memories of my life. I got that one there in Bear Bryant. And then, of course, my thumb, the issue with my thumb, we lose to Cleveland in overtime. But all through that time, Richard and I stayed friends. We really did. We never let this get to us. The competition was the competition.
Did you think you were the better quarterback?
Yes.
Would Richard Todd have made it big somewhere else other than New York, or bigger?
Don't tell me. I mean, I will tell you this. I think Richard was a very, very good quarterback. I mean,
he had some good years.
I mean, you do 12 years and you played an AFC championship game and go to the playoffs a number of times, you're doing something right.
Yeah. I don't mean that to denigrate Richard at all. I think he had some really good years. Getting that Jet team to the AFC championship game against Miami that year was big. He didn't have a good championship game, but this isn't all because of him. The weather was bad, but it was tough for him in New York a lot of times. Even when he was doing well, it seemed he was having a tough go of it because we'd get the New York papers, even upstate here.
To Richard's credit, here the situation was harder for him. He comes in behind Joe, out of Alabama with an expectation. Okay, I come in as a number 9 draft choice, and anything I do is good. Anything I do bad is expected, because I'm a kid from a non-throwing school. And so I was kind of the fan darling for not necessarily right reasons. I just was. And that's kind of the way it handed out. And then, of course, Richard kind of took a stance against the fans a little bit. You don't do that with New York fans.
No.
But anyway, again, I mean, a lot of drama for nothing, so to speak. A lot of talk about nothing. But all in all, Richard, and I went and visited Richard when he was doing the bond markets in Atlanta. I used to go visit him up in Atlanta at his office, and I've been to Sheffield to his home. And so he and I stayed friends.
Well, let me ask you this first. Your coach there was Walt Michaels. What was your relationship like with Walt? Another kind of polarizing figure in New York in his time here.
I tell you, I really like Walt. He was basically go play football, down and dirty, old school guy. I like that.
Yeah.
And the fact that he named me a starting quarterback, and this is where my heart breaks a little bit, because the guy went out on a limb for a number 9 draft choice. He went out on a limb. And then when I hurt my thumb, and it's not how I hurt my thumb, it's the fact that I kept it from him. Mm-hmm. And I played the game. And if we don't lose in overtime, or I don't throw a pick with 2 minutes left in overtime, or I don't call a pass play at the end of the game and get a holding penalty and get us out of field goal range to make the score 27-20 instead of 27-21 instead of 20. So now they got to score a touchdown, and then there's another play. We're on our own half-yard line, and Wesley's running wide open down the field, and he's so wide open, I don't want to overthrow him. So it's a 60, 70-yard completion instead of a turn the field upside down touchdown. Add all those things together, and the fact that I hid my thumb injury with Bob Reese, the trainer from Walt, put me in the doghouse, and rightfully so.
I mean, do you feel like that was the best Jet team you played on? And then if you hadn't gotten hurt, it might have been a special team or not?
I think that team was growing. The defensive core was in place. Mm-hmm. We had some really good offensive players. Of course, Jerome Barkham and Chester, Ray Chester. I'm not Ray Chester.
Rich Castor, right?
Rich Castor. They had switched from tight end to wide receiver, so they're on their way out. But they got 2 or 3 good years left. Offer a whole lot of experience. Wesley is what he is. We have a great array of running backs, and Kevin Long, Scott Durking, Clark Gaines, Bruce Harper, great return guy as well. We got a pretty good core football team. I wish I hadn't screwed up to see where that team went. I wish I'd have gotten through that 79 season. Because even in '78, we ended up, I think, 500, and we pissed away. Excuse my French, pissed away 2 games. So that year we go to the playoffs. Why we didn't was our own fault, not because we didn't have the team to get there.
What caused you left New York after that to go to Denver? What were the circumstances there, Matt?
I got traded to Denver. I think they gave a number 1 and a number 2 draft choice in Craig Penrose. When I went out there, Craig Morton was there. Here was the problem in Denver. They brought in a new guy, Rod Dowhauer, who was the OC at Stanford. And so he comes in, and I've never seen a guy over, and again, he's passed away too. So I'm not speaking out of school, but I've said this before publicly. This guy overcoached me like nothing I've ever seen. My mom called me halfway through the year and said, you don't look like the same guy. What the hell is going on when I watch you on the field? You would throw a perfect pass, but because I didn't step to the right at the last step, or my ball didn't come right over the top of my shoulder, he'd read me the riot act. And so I just got to a point where, he took all the fun out of the game. It just took all the fun out of it. And, I think I went down a little bit of a bad road there, because I got to where, well, fuck, it doesn't matter what I do. No, it just doesn't matter.
Had Denver, that was here, had Denver been to the Super Bowl the year before?
They were there in '77. That was the Orange Crush year. They lost the Super Bowl. This was 80 season. It's either 77 or 78. They still have the whole Orange Crush defense intact.
Yeah. And Morton was past his. Jesus, Craig Morton was a decent quarterback. He couldn't get out of his own way. I was always laugh when they'd run an option with Craig Morton. Like,
I tell you what, I used to laugh too, but it never failed. Whenever they got down, Denver got on the goal line, they called the option. That son of a gun would score. So he just had a way about him. He and I loved the guy myself. He and I were good friends. I loved him. He was just a good guy, really good guy that loved the game. His attitude was that of Marty Domrez. He was on the back end of his career. He was going to have fun till the very end. And I like Craig a lot.
He seems like a good old boy too. And what about the Red Miller was a coach there? Seemed like to have, at least, again, I didn't see as much of Red Miller as I saw Walt Michaels or read about because of the press here in New York, obviously. They seem like different type personalities, though. What was it like playing for Red?
Red was a little more personable than Walt. Walt was a pretty staunch guy. Red was a player's coach, so to speak. But when I got there, I think he was on the end of a bunch of frustration, having not repeated a year or two of playoffs and Super Bowl. So I guess they thought quarterback was the answer.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it was for that team, because that was a great football team. My gosh, Riley Odoms, Haven Moses, Rick Upchurch, Steve Watson, and the list goes defense like you wouldn't believe.
And all the guys I wrote down to talk about today. Great job.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think if I'm going to be completely transparent and honest, I could have been a better person, a better teammate when I got to Denver. Let's put it that way. We had a lot of opportunity, and I guess part of the wild child was still in me and not quite gone yet.
Was that you think that's what held you back in your career, where you didn't have a better, longer career? It was, not conforming. I don't know the right word.
No, that's a fair word, to be completely honest. Yeah. And again, it goes back to what I told you before, Keith. This was all just fun to me.
Yeah.
Until it was over, I didn't realize that it was truly a business, and I could have really excelled and extended my career 4 to 5 years and into some of that big money stuff. And, again, I'm not one. My dad never said, don't look back and say, I wish I had. Just look back, learn from it, and don't do it again. So I took that experience and that thought at the end of my career and went, okay, I'm never going to let opportunity pass me by again like it did here. And I still got 8 good years in. Don't get me wrong. I got my retirement, and still I'm in the record books and things like that. So
yeah, that's a good thing. You had some really good moments, obviously, in the game. It isn't like you didn't. So
Well, Keith, the key there is moments, not years.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Extended. I wish I'd have put some back to back.
That's a shame, but I think you've got a pretty good outlook on it, right? If you follow your faith, obviously, things are.
It is what it is.
Or what they are. Let me ask you a couple of quick questions. Who was the best player you played with in the NFL?
Wow, good question. From afar, looking at a teammate, Joe Klecko, not because he's recently in the news, but This guy was the consummate pro. He kept his mouth shut and worked his butt off and had a great attitude. Joe Klecko was one. Kenny Schroy was another one. Played strong safety for us. Good role models for me, a few years older than me. Randy Gradishar in Denver was another one, a guy that I really looked at and went, holy smokes. Joe Ferguson in Buffalo, sat behind him for 2 years.
Had some really good years in the NFL.
Definitely. Yeah, Joe, I mean, and work. This guy, again, was a great influence. So if I think about, when I'm thinking about a great football player, I think about a guy that's as much of a character in the locker room guy, a good guy in the locker room as much as a physical player himself. Well, Burgess Owens, now a senator in Utah or a House rep in Utah. Burgess was another one that was a great influence. Haven Moses was a great influence on me. So was Craig Morton. So I could go through a lot of guys. Very fortunate in my career to run into some really good people. Yeah,
I think you combined two of my questions there, and who was the best player and who was the best teammate. I think you combined the questions.
Okay, good. Sorry.
That's okay. No, that's good. Who was the player that got the most out of the least talent?
Ooh, good question. Great question. I'll say Bruce Harper. Not that he wasn't talented, but the guy was 4 foot whatever. If he was sitting here, I'd say the same thing because I talked to Bruce on and off. I've seen him up in New York a number of times. Bruce Harper, what a talent!
That's a good call. Yeah, he was a great little player. He would have fit today's game great. He'd have been great in today's NFL, wouldn't he?
Oh, you kidding me? Passing game out of the backfield, putting him in the slot on the hip. Oh my gosh! So Bruce was one. A guy named he was my left guard in Denver. Tom Glassick. This was another guy that had a squirrel that lived in his house. Had a squirrel for a pet. Really off the wall guy. But you talk about a guy that just grinded away. Joe Fields, another one, center for the New York Jets from Widener College. I mean, here's a quick story on Joe, just to show you the money differences. I get there in New York in 77. He's a third-year starter making $12,250 a year. Third-year starter. So anyway, again, the difference in the money. But, yeah, there's a number of guys that just, got everything. And, again, that's kind of why I look back, Keith, and go, golly, you wasted some talent, man. God gave you some pretty good talent to do this and a good head for it. And here you wasted it. You should have had that attitude. That guy who's working his ass off because he's happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, here's a question that sometimes people are a little reluctant to answer, but I'll ask it anyway because it's a little twist on that. Who is the most talented player who got the least out of what he had to work with?
Ooh, that's a good one. Riley Odoms.
Really?
Tight end for Denver. Oh, this guy was so physically talented, but just, kind of was a little lazy. But I love the guy. Don't get me wrong. Riley was one. Golly, let me think. Guy that had so much talent, but just didn't excel. There's not a lot I can think of, to be honest with you. Most of the guys that were there, worked pretty hard at it. Now, if you ask somebody else, one of my teammates, that question, they may just name me.
Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think it would be.
Okay.
I think it would be fair.
Very honest answer. I like that. I was just going to run off a couple of guys quick and give me like one word about each one of these guys.
Sure.
2 words. Wesley Walker.
Love him. I've never seen a guy that could run so fast, even after he was at full speed. He'd run even faster.
Rich
Strongest hips in the game. I'm sorry?
Rich Caster.
Loved Rich. Made the transition from tight end inside to outside. Never complained. Was a great a mentor to me. I got to mention one other guy too.
Yep.
Randy Rasmussen, who was a rookie on the '69 Super Bowl team, guard.
Yeah.
This guy took me under his wing and treated me like gold. I'll never forget him for it. I used to go get pizzas right at a curfew and polish his shoes, just like they did in all the old days. But a quick story about how the game has changed. When Randy was a rookie, now imagine this, he's going through a season and they go to the Super Bowl. When he was a rookie, the other offensive linemen never spoke to him except during practice or or in the film room. Never spoke to him in the locker room, afterwards, socially, nothing. Never spoke to him. And that's how rookies were treated back then. And this guy's starting rookie on a Super Bowl team. Well, after the season, when they won the Super Bowl, they put him on a plane and sent him to Jamaica with all rest of the offensive linemen and wives and stuff. But that's a little difference in the game. I don't mean to interrupt, but go ahead.
Okay, that's good. That's what I like. Little different. We haven't talked about this position. Pat Leahy.
Oh, love Pat. Love Pat Leahy. Great. Can I tell you 2 stories about Pat?
Absolutely.
Okay, one of them has a cuss word in it. So the first story,
use it correctly. I have no problem with the word as long as we use it in the right context. That's
okay. Good. That's fair enough. So the first thing is Pat. After the first season, I'm holding for Pat as a rookie. Of course, Pat has a pretty serious stutter, and I don't pick at that at all. It is what it is. So about a month into the off season, I call Pat on the phone. Well, it took about 45 minutes to have a 10-minute conversation with him. And at the end of the call, I said, Pat, here's the deal. Next time I'm either calling collect or you're going to call me. This is really expensive to get so much little information out of you because of the stutter. It was a standing joke. So here's the story about Pat. We're playing at the beginning of the year. The Mets, we're playing in Shea, and the baseball diamond is still out there. We're driving to the closed end. We're getting near the pitcher's mound. We're playing New England. It's second down. Third down. So I call timeout. I go to the sideline. I'm talking to Walt. I go, Pat, hey, listen, tell me, do you want to kick from the middle of the field in the dirt, or do you want grass, which is going to be a hash? So it tells me where to hand the ball off. Pat starts stuttering. He starts pacing the sideline. Walt and I are talking about the play. The referee finally goes, Robinson, get your team on the field. Pat, he's spitting and stuttering, and he can't get it out. He's pacing the field, and I finally go, Pat, what are we going to do? He goes, it doesn't fucking matter. I've never laughed so hard on the sideline of my entire life. That's my Pat. I love Pat. Great guy.
See, correct use of the word. I like that. Nobody should be offended when you use the word correctly.
It was used correctly.
The other half of the Rich Castor switch, Jerome Barkham.
Yeah, love Jerome too. Great story about Jerome. My first start in the NFL, we're playing the Steelers. We're driving down the field first drive. Jerome's playing tight end. Jack Lambert's playing in the middle. I'm scared to death of the guy. He's so mad. He's got 3 teeth in his mouth. He's so mad that this lowly Jets team is driving on him. He's spitting and fussing. Well, Jerome got tickled. And when he got tickled, I got tickled. So we're at the line of scrimmage, and I'm calling the signals, and Lambert's gone off. And Jerome is kind of in his stance, but looking up at me, he's laughing uncontrollably, which made me start laughing uncontrollably, which made Lambert even madder. So anyway, that's my Jerome Barkham story. Another great guy and a great mentor.
One more Jet, and I got a few guys from your other teams. Mickey Schuler.
Great tight end. Just a bone-crushing, go get him, do anything he's asked to do, tight end. Mickey, another good guy from Penn State. And a pretty darn productive player too.
Yeah, most of the guys I had written down for Denver, you already talked about a little bit. Morton, Odoms, and Gradishar. A couple you didn't. Haven Moses.
Yeah, Haven, loved Haven. He and I hung out together all the time. He kind of took me under his wing when I got there and helped me out quite a bit with the offense and stuff. So Haven, a really good guy.
Tom Jackson.
Tom, another one. Good guy. Didn't have a lot of interaction with Tom. Really kind of got to know him more when he got with ESPN. Not knowing more, but he and Chris Berman was a huge Jets fan, and I knew Chris from all those years. And, of course, when he and Tom started doing their thing, I kind of engaged with them more, and especially because I was down here doing 10 years of broadcasting for the Jaguars when they started in 95. So, therefore, that kind of tied me to Tom and Chris. I love Tom. I'll tell you what, here's the thing Tom Jackson did, going beyond the call of duty. Tom had a hemorrhoid, an extremely serious hemorrhoid operation on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and played that Sunday. I've never seen anything like it. How that guy played, I'll never know. He took a towel and put it in the back of his pants, and by the end of the day, the towel was completely bloody. This guy just played through pain. And so, again, guy's character, and a comment about his character.
Never heard of that story. The only hemorrhoid story I know from sports was George Brett in the 80 World Series.
That's the Tom Jackson story.
Yeah, that's a good one. Joe Cribbs.
Joe from Buffalo. Boy, I still talk to Joe. As a matter of fact, I talked to him less than 6 months ago. We stay in touch on Facebook, and we played a couple golf tournaments together. Great running back. Very, very, how do you describe him? Who was the guy from Pittsburgh that had such great
Hey,
years ago.
you broke up on me after the guy from Pittsburgh. What was it?
The running back from Pittsburgh that was such a patient runner, and then he sat out a year, only about 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway, that's what Joe reminded me of. Joe was so smart in the backfield and finding holes and being patient, and at the same time still had the ability to run over people.
I know who you're talking about. He actually has never been the same player since he sat out.
Yeah, exactly. He was holding up. They offered him 14. He wanted 28 or some like that.
Yeah, I can't remember. You should know his name. It'll come to me as soon as we're done, I'm sure.
You know what I'm talking about. But that's what Joe kind of reminded me of. He was a real patient and smart runner, and as tough as you wanted, he needed to be, without a doubt.
Yeah, one more guy, Frank Lewis.
Frank, the old veteran from Pittsburgh to Buffalo. Yeah, Frank, he's just a guy that was steady Eddie, and, he'd go up and make a one-handed catch, and it was like, okay, that's Frank. He just did everything you could ever ask a guy to do on the field, and he was great in the locker room. He was one of those lead by example, not by his mouth. He was he was a gentleman.
And the one coach we didn't talk about that you played for was Chuck Knox, who turned that Buffalo franchise around from some bad years when he got there with the players we just talked about.
Yeah, I love Chuck. Chuck was the epitome of a player's coach. He took the Isaiah Robertsons, the Matt Robinsons, the Phil Villapianos, Conrad Doblers, all the outcasts from everywhere else, and he put them all in Buffalo, and it turned out pretty darn good.
So Buffalo's kind of the Raiders East.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it and I like Chuck. Chuck was, again, a player's coach. Stay out of the papers, come show up and do your job and do it well. And that was Chuck's philosophy.
Before we get done here, we'll talk a little bit. I want to talk about your post-career a little bit, but what was it like in USFL playing there compared to the NFL? And, the league got off to a decent start. There was some good football played, and there was a great documentary, 30-30 on ESPN. I don't know if you watched those. Most of them are well done. Who Killed the USFL?
Yeah.
And it turns out it was Donald Trump. But
he also killed his second term as president, but we won't go there. He killed that himself.
This is true, but we won't go that direction tonight. But what was the USFL like?
Well, first of all, having Lindy Infante as my head coach, he was a true pro. Obviously, he had been in Indy and Green Bay, and I just loved his offense.
Mind, yeah.
Yeah, loved his offense. So he was kind of the second Bill Walsh, so to speak. Bill came out with his offense, and Lindy hit it with his. And I loved an offense where literally, if I did everything right and the receivers, we all read everything the same way. Even if a guy ran free off the corners, the quarterback would never get stuck with the football. There was always a place to throw it, and that was a great offense to be in. The USFL, I kind of compare it from high school to college to USFL to NFL. In college, you're worried about 4 or 5 guys on the other side of the ball. In the USFL, you're worried about 6 or 7 guys on the other side. In the NFL, you better worry about all 11.
Yeah.
Because one of them's going to sting you. So that was the USFL. I thought it was pretty first-class football. Of course, then I go to L.A., and I play on a sand field out in the middle of nowhere. Awesome. And then I ended up in Portland practicing on a middle school soccer field. So there was some really good and bad about it. I do say this, though. It really is a shame because that league would still be going if Trump had to push the antitrust lawsuit. Because I look at the Bulls football team, 8 guys from that team went on to play after the league folded, went on to play 5 years or better in the NFL. Names like Jay Pennison, Van Jakes, Gary Clark. These are guys that played a lot of places and played a lot of football. Yeah. So there was a lot of quality football going on.
Some good coaches too. Jim Mora so does what's the right term? Got his start in the USFL.
Exactly. George Allen came back, and of course, that was part of the problem though when they brought the George Allens back and a lot of these NFL guys in the second year. George brought all of his retired Skins defensive line and paid them all $450,000 each, and just blew the budgets right out the window.
They were all 70 years old by then, probably too, right?
Exactly.
So they went too far, in my opinion. Again, watching that, if they'd stayed in the spring, they'd have had a better shot. Plus, they expanded too fast into the second season, and there was a lot of factors there. And of course, Trump trying to really force a merger was all his.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, Keith, that after that 84, that third year, did they go 3 years? Yeah, 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
83, 4, and 5. After the third year, Fred Bullard and I, who own the Bulls here, he and I got to be buddies. And he told me, he said, Matt, we had all spent about 10, 11, $12 million over the 3 years. We had just signed a contract with ESPN. Things are moving forward. This league, that league was going to make it. It was actually going to make it. And like you said, stay in the spring, be who you are. Don't try to be somebody else. I mean, I think they'd still be playing right now.
Yeah, I do too. It's a shame. How about the Jacksonville? You were there from the beginning at Jacksonville, right? With at least part of the broadcast crew, and Tom Coughlin was the original coach, and very quickly made that a very good football team and good football program. What was that like from the startup? Seeing it from the startup to where they kind of got fairly quickly.
I tell you, it was an interesting experience because, of course, I played in the Gator Bowl when it was the Gator Bowl in Georgia. And then, of course, they made some improvements. Of course, the Jaguars are coming to town. They do a whole rehab of the whole thing. So we're in trailers on site. And I just was able to kind of witness everything transform into this NFL entity. And working for Wayne Weaver was great. Our broadcast division, we had a lot of fun. A little different then. Wayne decided to have everybody in-house. Normally, broadcast team are either the radio guy and their independent contractors from the radio or the TV station, the play-by-play and stuff. But he brought us all in-house, and Brian and I did all the radio, all the TV. I wrote, hosted, and produced the Tom Coughlin show. Nobody from outside. Wayne wanted to have editorial ownership of everything instead of leaving opinion on a new football team up to the local broadcasters, so to speak. So it was a very generous situation. It was really cool. And of course, Tom was great. Tom is Tom, closet nice guy. I loved working for him, but there was because of Tom's mentality, and rightfully so, there was a real separation between admin and football. Okay. So there was not, football was football, and we were just the administrative guys. And so, I mean, I had a couple run-ins with Tom. He called me on the carpet once because I believe that being a radio color analyst, you need to be credible. And in order to be credible, you got to talk about what people see. If you try and be a homer, you're not good. So Tom called me on the carpet a couple times, said I should be more of a homer. I didn't agree with him. It eventually cost me my job, but that's okay. The other part of it, I love the broadcasting. What I learned about the broadcasting behind the scenes and the TV and the radio was a bunch of fun, and the team was great. Mark Manell and I became great friends. He and I coached years of high school afterwards, here in Jacksonville. And of course, Mark's up in Detroit now. It was just a wonderful experience. And to see it all brand new, Keith, and see it kind of unfold in front of you, and then be able to experience 2 AFC games, and unfortunately lose both. But
they went. I mean, they were only in their third or fourth year, weren't they, when they played the Patriots in the
96 and 99. So we originated in 95, year 2, and year 5, year 4.
Year 2, yeah.
Year 2, 96 and 99 were the 2 years, and one was Buffalo. No, Denver, and that took us to Buffalo, and the other one was New England. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that New England game. Drew Bledsoe was the quarterback. And I remember it because that was the year the fat bastard, as I affectionately refer to Mr. Parcells, who's a great coach, but just not a good human being. I'm sorry. But anyway, kind of ruined our season that year, ruined our Super Bowl experience that year. Matt, listen, before I let you go, I know I've kept you a little bit longer than I told you I would. This always happens because we get talking, and
this is good stuff. I'm enjoying myself.
I just enjoy going back and forth with you. Tell us about your career after, football, after the Jaguars. You mentioned a little bit about what you've been doing for the past however many years. Tell us about what's gone on with your life since then and what you're doing now.
Yeah, quick overview. I've got a 27-year-old daughter who went to Florida State, criminology, psychology major, got her master's now in forensic psychology, lives 10 minutes down the road. My best buddy. Just love her to death. So she's a big part of my life. I actually got out of football. I got into real estate over the years and got into construction. We were a third-party construction group, building a bunch of apartments around the country. But let's say the last 10 years, I've been in the home care business. We're the largest private duty home care company in the state of Florida. And as well, I have a partner. We own a CBD company called Players Choice CBD. You'll see us a lot on all the social media if you're looking. And then also with that same partner, he and I are partners in a healthcare technology company that's doing very well. It really is kind of cutting edge on where healthcare is going, keeping people at home. out of the hospital. It's helping in a lot of different ways. So really, those are my three concentrations. And I'm hoping to sell with my partners, the home care company, in a couple of years. I'll be 69 years old, and I'll be ready to retire when I'm 69, 70, but I'm having fun right now, and I have a lot of free time too. So that's good.
You're working hard, and that's a good, and you're doing some good things there, it sounds like, too. And
Thanks.
I will check out the CBC. I use it myself for some rheumatoid arthritis issues that I have. It works wonders. I love it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sold on it. Like I said, our company is Players Choice CBD, and if you ever want to try it, I'll give you the discount code. Let me know. And
absolutely,
I think it's good stuff. I know this. I always measure. When you're athletic, you get to know your body over the years. And I got to a point where I got my knee replaced 2 years ago, which should have been done 14 years earlier. But I just know I started on the CBD stuff. We did about 2 years of research to find the products we wanted. So I started on the products, stayed on them for about a month and a half, 2 months, felt great. Then I got off them and I realized how good they were. Because you know how it is, you get off them and then you go, holy smokes, it hurts again. Oh, my shoulder, all the inflammation's back in your body. So that's why I knew it was the real thing, and I wanted to get involved.
Yeah, I've done the same kind of thing. I get it. Exactly what you're saying. So listen, Matt, this has been it's been an hour. Feels like we've been 5 minutes here. This has been I agree. I had a great time with you here, and I appreciate you coming in. I'm going to wrap it up. I want to be able to say goodbye to you, so I'm going to let you go to the green room here. But if you can stay 2 minutes, I'll be right, or 1 minute. I'll be right back just to wrap it up with you.
Keith, sounds great. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for coming in today, Matt. My guest, Matt Robinson, former Bulldog quarterback, Jet, Bronco and Bills player, played in the USFL. He talked about doing some great things in the healthcare industry. Listen, good guy. I love talking to guys like Matt. It's been a blast. So when you watch this, please get out, like and share TGI Sports Talk and Let's Talk Sports, and help myself and Dan Harris out, and look for Matt's stuff too. I'll get some information from him, and I'll post it to the TGI Sports Talk page. So guys, I'm going to say goodbye, and we're going to wrap it up tonight, and I'll be back on Sunday with the Stream of Consciousness show, and we'll be back also with the College Sports Huddle next week. So I'll see you later. Keith Engle out. My background music seems to have left me, so we're just going to say good night, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.